It's my great pleasure this afternoon to introduce three terrific people who will be speaking. You'll hear from our Dean, John Lee, Dean of International and Area Studies, followed by the Dean of the Journalism School, Orville Schell, and then our honored speaker, Ta-lin Hsu. So I just want to say a couple of words about John Lee. Before he joined the Berkeley faculty in 2003, he held a number of teaching and research positions around the Pacific Rim, including Tokyo, South Korea, Taiwan, New Zealand, Japan, Hawaii, and Oregon. In addition to those, he has also held positions inland at Illinois and Michigan and Harvard, where he earned his BA and PhD. Please welcome John Lee.
Let me begin by thanking Dick Palmer, the brain behind this wonderful conference today, and Tom Garvey. And Tom Garvey of Cisco, who I guess is kind of a body, I guess, behind this initiative, as well as, I'm sorry, and of course, our assistant dean, Camille Crittenden, and Jillian Edgelow, who has worked tirelessly to make this possible. So thank you, Camille and Jillian. It's really my pleasure and honor to precede Ta-lin Hsu, whom we're very honored to have today, as well as Graduate School of Journalism Dean Orville Schell, who will introduce Dr. Hsu. Dean Schell, as you know, is an exceedingly influential intellectual journalist who has written on a wide array of topics, most recently on the global climate change and the ongoing war in Iraq. As you know, in our context, however, he's best known for a series of pioneering reportage from China, including the classic 1977 book In the People's Republic, as well as the highly prescient 1984 book To Get Rich is Glorious. Indeed, in any essential library on China's turbulent half-century, we would perforce turn to the work of Berkeley faculty members, whether the penetrating political analyses by Bob Scalapino, Chalmers Johnson, or Franz Sherman, or the profound cultural historical meditation by late Joseph Levinson. For Berkeley has long been synonymous with the best scholarship on China and its fabulous and fascinating civilization. When I was a curious undergraduate at Harvard, where I first read Dean Schell's many books, I couldn't help but notice that many of the assigned texts were written by the faculty members at UC Berkeley. When I invoke these names today, these great scholars, current colleagues, such as James Cahill, Fred Wakeman, David Kitely, to just name a few, giants all, they inevitably generate awe and inspiration around the Pacific Rim. So when it came turn to advise my brother where he should go to college, of course I said, you should go to Berkeley. And he did, indeed he did, majored in Chinese studies and made his millions in China. I didn't make my millions, having gone to Harvard. A tradition of brilliant scholarship, like a great civilization, however, must, alas, continuously create and recreate itself. This seems especially urgent today, when the 21st century may very well turn out to be the Chinese century. Even if you don't believe in such hyperbolic prognostication, you cannot but avert gaze away from the country of 1.3 billion people for very long. Even for the most ethnocentric and most isolationist of Americans, we cannot but acknowledge the tremendous Chinese holding of US currency, the explosive expansion of its economy, and its dynamic diasporic population. Or wonder about its restless rural population, 800 million people about to enter the modern world, its impact on the looming environmental crisis facing the world today, and of course, military and security concerns. To continue the tradition of great scholarship at Berkeley and to tackle the pressing issues facing America and the world today and tomorrow, International and Area Studies has launched the Berkeley China Initiative, about which you've heard from IAS Associate Dean Tom Gold today. It's being led by Tom, Chair of Center for Chinese Studies, Kevin O'Brien, Professor of History Wenxin Ye, Dean Schell, myself, and a very distinguished roster of advisory board members, including, of course, Mr. Hsu. The Berkeley China Initiative hopes to ensure that whether we want to know about Tang poetry or Ming bars, Chinese business practice or legal landmines, avian flu or human rights issues, that we can all continue to turn to Berkeley for its information and insight. We want to encourage scholarship in all things Chinese and to promote the all-important academic and other sorts of exchange between the two countries. Not coincidentally, of course, these two themes echo the opening lines of Confucius' Analects. I'm very sorry that I've taken my few minutes talking about the China Initiative and not about Dean Shell's extremely distinguished and glorious career. But suffice it to say that I'm very proud to say that I'm a fellow dean at an institution that would have Orville Schell as a leading academic figure. So please, Orville.
Well, it's great to see you all. I have to say this is a really high on the periodic table gathering of people. And it's, I think, precisely what universities ought to do, to have you all who spend a lot of your time in the outside world into our world and to sort of cross-pollinate and to actually do it in reverse as well. So I think it's a very gratifying event in terms of the future of the Berkeley China Initiative. I'm just going to speak for a few minutes before I introduce徐大麟. You know, we've been focusing very much on business. And I want just for a few minutes to pull back a little and look from the micro to the macro. Because after all, if you actually believe that due diligence involves sort of the full menu of factors which play into a business environment, you cannot but do that. And I think it's very critical for people who are in business to look whenever possible at this slightly larger context. Now, I want to say at the outset, I think any of you who look at that and are not quite sure what the proper conclusion is are not unique. In fact, none of us, I think, who've been watching this country for decades quite know what to make about China's future. In many ways, it's incredibly bright and incredibly impressive. And in other ways, there are fault lines and tensions and problems which, when you really start contemplating them, you can't see how it's possible to imagine a happy end. And these things do exist in a kind of a very curious world, sort of parallel universes. And the real question is, how do you factor them together? How do you make sense out of the overall situation? Whether you're doing business, whether you're analyzing it politically, whether you're interested in culture, whatever it is that happens to be your main concern. I want to quickly rifle through these two sort of parallel universes just to remind us all that this is a country in a grave state of lack of resolution, but also a very heightened state of dynamism. If we look on the sort of encouraging side, we see extraordinary amounts of FDI. We see growth rates that are the envy of the world. We see foreign exchange reserves, which are quite amazing, considered our fallen state of grace in this country. In fact, much of that money is here. We see development, particularly in the coastal areas, but many inland cities as well, that just is staggering by comparison to any other place in the world. We see a manufacturing base that is seemingly incomparable to any other place in the world. We see a country that, for the first time in many, many decades, has peaceful borders by and large. We also see a country that in the last few years has had a peaceful transfer of leadership, even though the system of governance in China is certainly not democratic. It made a transition which I think was quite to the credit of the system as it is. We see a rise of a middle class. We see in many respects a country that has surprised everybody. If, like me, you were in China in 1989 during the demonstrations, it was hard to imagine that we would arrive at a time such as now when the ship of the Chinese state would have stayed steady on the course and accomplished so much. But if we look at the other ledger, and this, in fact, is what due diligence really must do, look at both sides of the ledger, we see some very grave problems. I'm not going to talk much about them. You look at the banks, you look at the financial markets. I think until China finds a way to really make the financial markets work to be the engine of capital formation rather than foreign investment, it's not going to be a fully developed economy. That's a challenge. Markets are quite weak at this point. You look at the environment. We're doing a two-day event, May 23rd and 24th, in Beijing on global climate change, a question of great relevance to the U.S. and China. We're bringing about 20 faculty members from Berkeley to team them up with Chinese counterparts, the media, government people, NGOs, to try to see how do these, what's a likely scenario for these two countries to actually have some remedial effect on this problem. You look at healthcare in China, not a pretty picture. The old system has died. The new system has not been born. Education. Education is kind of wandering. Nobody quite knows what the new financial model, business model, if you will, for education is going to be. Look at Taiwan. This is a very inflammatory situation. This is an area in which the whole enterprise could come a cropper with one or two bad steps. You have to remember, this is out there. There are a lot of these problems which I think we don't have answers for yet. And it is the challenge, I think, of all of you in trying to assess how you run your businesses, what do you invest in, what are the long-term prospects of this country. In other words, what is the larger context in which all business ventures must sit? And what are the variables and the unresolved elements that could play into some consideration of how you do your business? It's a question which we in the university, curiously, spend most of our time studying. So in a certain sense, you and we are a little like Jack Spratt and his wife. Together, I think it may be possible to lick the platter clean. So I wanted to just quickly mention these things because I think often they get forgotten. One side tends to underplay the area of endeavor of the other, and they properly belong together. Now, let me introduce to you徐大麟. I'm thrilled when he came up to me today to tell me what he's going to talk to you about, and I will tell you that in a moment. Who is徐大麟? Well, he's a man who combines a lot of very interesting aspects, from business to culture to politics, part of that great movement of Chinese from the mainland to Hong Kong maybe, or to Taiwan. He went to National Taiwan University. He came here to get a PhD in engineering. He was the founder and CEO of H&Q Asia Pacific, an investment company which maybe he'll tell you a little bit about. But he's going to talk to you about contemporary Chinese art. And he's going to talk to you about it because, as an investor, he believes it's a hell of an investment. But also, interestingly enough, and I hope we'll have a chance to get into this a bit, it tells a lot about China. It is a very interesting window through which to look in and see what is happening. Because if there's one thing that characterizes China, it's a kind of an indirection, particularly in cultural and political expressions. And art is a marvelous way for sort of the inner sentiments of a country to be revealed in a way that isn't too explicit, too direct, doesn't put eyes and too many fingers. So I think it's a wonderful combination of business and pleasure, of culture, politics, and economics. And I present to you徐大麟.
Thank you, Dean Hsu and Dean John Lee. I have to tell you this story, that my daughter went to Exeter. That's a 200-year-old high school. I was told by her that every Wednesday there is a session called Forum. So 10 o'clock in the morning exactly, that they invite one of their alums to come back to Exeter to tell them, talk about their career, success, or failure, whatever, be it journalists or engineers, politicians, or so. Every one of them chuckled and had tears and talk about how privileged, how proud, how exciting, how emotional he or she was, invited back after 30 years and to talk, and then invariably tears falling from the eyes. So, and then you see all these high school kids, they always say, cut it, cut out, because they heard it so many times. Everybody come back, do say the same thing. So they say, cut. So I'm sure you want me cut it, okay? But I do feel that very, very special to be able to come back. This is the place I stayed between 1966 and 1967, my first year at Berkeley. So I won't shed my tears, and, but I thank you for this opportunity. Being a venture capitalist or private equity person, after many journeys of physics undergraduate and engineering, actually I couldn't pass the engineering test, so they create something called engineering science, so that I didn't have to design those circuits in order to get a PhD from ECS. I couldn't design a circuit. And so doing something optics and magneto-optics and lasers and that kind of thing. So that's how I started. And then one thing I did is just really changing with the time. Whenever the paradigm shift and the change, made the change. All Chinese know the book of change. The only thing doesn't change what is change itself. So the time change, and I was younger days, so always hoping to change with it. Okay. So I want to tell you something about my failures in the VC and private equity rather than talk about the successes. Okay. In order to tell you those failures mean something, I probably have to tell you my qualification for making those failures. So for that, I show you 2 pages of commercial and about my organization. My first slides. Okay, maybe somebody can help me there. Oh, sure. Okay, great. Sure. And I left IBM and joined Hambrecht and Quist in 1985. At that time, the simple background, as Dean Orville was said earlier, that at that time I saw Taiwan reacting to the oil shock. They want to upgrade their industry. So they needed to get into the so-called high tech. And PC was invented 81, 82. So that created opportunity for Taiwan to get into the manufacturing aspect of personal computer and later on semiconductor. And we were given the credit of bring the U.S. style venture capital to Taiwan. U.S. style means we manage other people's money versus the family money, government money, and all that. And you'll see a little bit later that first we went to Southeast Asia and now more in the North Asia, so has a network of 8 offices in Asia, and over the year accumulate at about $2.1 billion under management. Lots of a company, because in Asia, earlier days was a very small company, $1 million, $2 million, $3 million or so. But since the Asian financial crisis, we also got into the buyout restructure type of thing. So again, follow the change of the time. And we are very proud to have among our advisors is Laura Tyson and Bill Perry. And because of Laura, actually no, because of before Channing Tian or so, I'm have the privilege of being an advisory board at Hsu School. And next. And so this is our kind of migration, again, because time changed. Okay, back in 1994, United Nations published a book about the East Asia miracle, talk about those double-digit growth in the Southeast Asia, the Indonesia, the Thailand, the Singapore, the Malaysia, or so. And the only thing they marveled that only if the world knew that how they grow, the double digit, everybody would be beneficial of that. But actually, it turned out, generally looking back, that wasn't that great place for venture capital or private equity. That's another kind of story. The turning point was actually the Asian financial crisis. That actually that crisis happened in Japan a lot earlier. I think Jack Wadsworth said it took a long time for them to realize, or they just deny mood for a long time. But then Korea's collapse is spectacular, and that's also somewhat of nationalistic their nature. When they really realized that things went wrong. In a way, it's unfortunately that the banking, the financial system just wholesale collapsed. We sense that, part of because associated with Bill Perry. So we start going to South Korea even before 1997. I flew in almost with the same flight with Wolfenson. And we set up the first private equity operations in South Korea. And they made the changes, and unfortunately, that a lot of foreign, they didn't have the regulations, so that Korea had pension money, but they could not invest in this asset class. So they just kind of dazed when this all happened. Almost all the bankrupt, and the foreign private equity people just went in droves and bought those banks in like a fire sales or so. Of course, the trigger point was more in Thailand, 1997, July 2nd. But Thailand did not change as much. So Korea actually, coming out is a stronger country now. But on the other hand, unfortunately, they also have this kind of backlash against the foreign, quote-unquote, voucher capitals or so. And that's another whole subject about, we talked earlier about 1 mile rules or valuation, corporate governance, and all of those things relevant discussion issues. But there's another issue about the sort of feeling, the local nationalistic feelings or so. How do you treat the people? You can make a lot of money away or so, but some they look with a great deal of resent. Some they feel that you save their bank or sale industry. Some have to be really included in your whole treatment. You just don't fly into any place. You think you're the smartest guy, with either degree from Berkeley or Harvard, and you make tons of money and say sayonara and hell with you, okay? And it doesn't work that way in Asia. And the Shinseis or and now the Lone Star subject to audit, and Warburg Pincus is being somewhat prosecuted. There are lots of this kind of backlash. But anyhow, we went to Korea and Japan, and we had some great successes there, and see what the opportunity that there was. We financed Access as a browser for the Docomo, and the first U.S. venture-backed company that went public in Japan, called the motherboard, not the electronic motherboard, but the motherboard. And after the deregulation WTO, now we become a stronger activity in China. But we look at still the manufacturing and the branded consumer. We're selling Starbucks coffees in Beijing, And I should have brought more coupons here so that next time many people you travel to Beijing, and I can give you some coupons. So, and it's a really odd thing. The Big Mac index in Beijing is 0.6, okay, and the latte index is 102. So you know that means, okay, you can buy a hamburger cheaper in Beijing than Berkeley, but you pay more for a latte in Beijing there. Okay, all these kind of things has been talked about. You all know better than I do. The only one thing I want to mention is there is 300,000, some people say 350,000 annual production of engineers in China. That's very formidable. Yes, today, that most of them are engaged on second mover, third mover, copying type of activities. But part of the reason I mentioned to Orville earlier is that I kind of like the idea of contemporary Chinese art, because what the heck, when I first saw it 2 years ago, I couldn't flip through the pages. I don't understand it. I don't like it. I found it distasteful and just totally, but then I found, gee, that they are creative, innovative, they're unconventional, they didn't copy from anybody. And that sense, the glimpse of creativity is what kind of attracted me, that maybe if like art, like films, that they can have the kind of break. Finally, last night, a Taiwanese artist, Li An, won the Oscars Best Director Award. So they're inching into the non-engineering world, okay? So other department in Berkeley has a chance to also impact the world now, rather than only through their engineers or scientists in Berkeley. Okay, there's some problem in the slide, which is fine. I really want to show is, let me see whether, okay, I want to show is, you look at the last sort of 13, 14 years. The recent reform started really in 1992, okay? 89 with Tiananmen, the whole thing collapsed. Most foreigners left town. After they anyway had a difficult time through the 80s, they didn't make money. Based on one pencil, one Chinese. Many of the corporate, they went marching to China to look at what is this thing. They say, this is one pencil. They say, how many people in China? It's 1.3 billion people. Only if I sell one pencil to one Chinese, okay? How many? Okay, adjourn the boardroom meeting, marching to China. That's what the 80s. So the dream crashed down in 89. That's my thought. They didn't make money, so went home. Except for a few, the Avons, the Motorola's, the Volkswagens. So they kind of benefited that. And immediately afterwards, because that vacuum created, so that a lot of the overseas Chinese filled that vacuum. They went in droves. The overseas Chinese felt, killing a few Chinese people, what's the big deal? Okay, that's been done so many times in the history of China. So they went in. They formed joint ventures. Okay, JV was a failure. I don't have to elaborate. Everybody knows about that. You don't put two persons, 50 years apart in cultural background, something, a shotgun marriage, and in a rigid form. This just won't work, okay? And I think the change happened about 95, 96, so into something called WOFE. I would say all my friend venture capitalists or private equity people, when you make investment today, mostly, almost all of them using the WOFE form. The corporate structure is in Cayman Island or some place that you can have the corporate governance and lend it to IPOs and all that. And then on the end, the whole China thing is a corporate, wholly owned subsidiary there. And of course, lately, that everybody thinks China is more interesting because they open up more the telecoms, the retail. Walmart doesn't need to have a local partner now. And lots of the retail are open to the outside world. Okay. So I'll just skip that the post-WTO's court opportunity. Okay, and here I just want to mention, then I'll go to my failure cases, that in the very early days, in the 92, 93 years or so, there really wasn't too much of technology venture capital there. The China Academy of Science, I spent a year or two cultivating relationship, but they really have 98,000 of researchers. Research is the same thing for 30, 40 years, so nothing really related to the modern day technology. But today, then the private equity continue to flourish because of the deregulation. There are many, many possibilities, but difficult thing is management. You know, if you acquire something, especially as a state-owned enterprise, how do you manage that? It's a big, big problem. My friend mostly talked about this morning are new startups. It's that problem much less so. But on the other hand, now with you heard earlier session that there are opportunity in the internet or web space and maybe ASIC, a lot of technology possibility now. Of course, the big issue is whether they can be innovative, you know, looking for the next disruptive technology or service or gadget. So it may come, and that very much depend on whether they can really realizing the creativity there. But the private equity is a possibility, because in China, you may argue 15 years ago, 90%, 95% of business were all public, even state-owned enterprises. Now that number dramatically dropped to maybe even 40% or so, and more is coming. So they're going to be privatized MBOs, and sure they don't want you to use the word MBO, and lots of privatization happening. So I would say both venture capital and private equity opportunity do exist in China today. Okay, this is almost the first one or two deal we did. The background was very good. My hometown is in Qingdao, Shandong province. This is the next to the Shandong city. They welcome me like the returnees and the red carpet, you name it. The mayor, the vice mayor, the party leader, whining me, dining me, day in, day out, and so. And they found the best deal for me, which is the number 2 rated tire company in Rongcheng. And Rongcheng is next to Qingdao, a beautiful, way high area. And its company is good, the efficient, all the indexes. We had the good years, ex-CFO's money into the deal, because Bill Hambrecht asked me, Ta-lin, what do you know about tire? I said, I don't know a lot about it. Did you kick it? I said, I know how to kick it, okay? And so finally I got good years CFO to invest money. He said, all right, that maybe fine. My argument vision is that I know with the kind of road they're building also, China eventually going to be saturated with cars, okay? And if you selling tires, that time they were only talking about bias ply. We were just transitioning to the radial ply tire. I had my able partner, Dan Carroll, none other than Carroll now leads the New Brit, making numerous trips to Hanover and Akron, Ohio, and we brought in all the world class. They all share our vision. Michelin, not interested in joint venture because they're rich and everything. Also, Japanese are not interested. But Continental was very hungry. The German was in trouble that time. They're willing to sell their technology and partner. So we took the people to their 7 trip to Hanover headquarters and brought them 8 trip to China, and LOI, MOU, you name it, sign and get them people live in Qingdao area. They all love it, drinking German beers and it's all good. Oh no, Qingdao beer, why it's good? Because German beer is Löwenbräu. Because German occupied Qingdao for many years. Of course, Chinese stole their technology. Okay, you don't have to think that way. But then everything dandy. Then with signing the joint venture arrangement with the Continental, I didn't even want to show up. I said, no, that's just something. Our Chinese partners, no show. After we put in about $12 million of our $17 million, no show. And then I called them later. I said, why you didn't show up? They say, Dr. Hsu, you don't really expect us to sign the contract, pay 3.5% royalty, because that's all the earning we have. And also, we learned everything. Thank you so much. We took all pictures every time we visit Hanover. And we can, for practical reason, there are some engineer in Qingdao Tire from Pirelli. We can hire them. So we got the people, we got technology, we got everything. We don't need to pay them 3.5%. My God, I'm speechless. Okay, I stopped, the next payment, or so then they accused me for not fulfilling my obligation of $17 million investment, and I just felt those people, I don't want anything to do with them. And okay, you can think of positively if they follow. We did 1994, 95 with the help of Dan Carroll, with Robert Yu and all these people. Today, they must be doing extremely well. We have the Continental supply 30% to the BMW and Mercedes-Benz, 30% their tire came from Continental. Okay, and what the Chinese did not know is you put Continental name on the rim of the tire, you can charge 10% more, and so the 3.5% you pay by itself. And you got really technology. German assure me those big truck radial tire, not easy to make. It's maybe not as difficult as the 90 nanoamps of angstroms of semiconductor, but it's also require a lot of technology, know-how, so. And so my Chinese partner just did not appreciate that. So we got into, of course they accused us not paying the rest of capital. We accused them, I don't want to deal with you. So all those wines and, drinkers, so all for nothing. And finally, after many years, because they need to, be merged with another company for public auditing, they returned us the money. So after all those efforts, we got our money back. That's it. And it's intellectual property. No respect. Where, in fact, over the year, that subject, my first reaction to a lot of people think, oh, they look at Chinese, I'm looking at like a Chinese. We follow Taiwan example. Taiwan had the same problem early on, but quickly get it over with. I have to give credit to my former colleague, Bob Evans, senior vice president of IBM, took the whole truckload of IBM lawyer, went to Taiwan when they found out there's this bias. There is BIOS in the PC, the government laboratory involved in developing, and basically work out the deal quickly. It's a low-cost version of patents, okay? And so got Taiwanese accept to become, law-abiding by paying a little bit, at least paying there. But that doesn't work. China, I think through the Cultural Revolution, people feel that the sort of inaccurate statement fooled a little bit. Maybe just let's say, cheating a little bit. It's not that big a deal, okay, if you survive. So it's going to take more time for Chinese to get rid of this lack of respect, disrespect to intellectual property thing. So I'm sorry. Maybe I used too strong a word here, but there is, it took a long time. I was hoping short time you can change that, but now I'm a little bit worried that the things is fairly hard there, okay? So I think that's the fair. I can tell you more failed cases, but maybe good things I mentioned, the SMIC we invested because using manufacturing know-how in China, even though today the stock price not so high, but it's in the #1 position, the company doing well, and some of the investor board director view of that is, China has this much a gap of supply and demand. In other words, they need this much semiconductor chip. They only produce this much in China. So this eventually, as long as you are in the first #1 position, you will be okay. Okay, so I think in the end it's okay. You watch the third quarter, fourth quarter, they should do well. And we introduced Starbucks. That was a very a big venture because most people consider China used to be a tea drinking country for centuries. Okay, why the hell would people pay that kind of price? Okay, you know, like what, 1 day's wages or so for a lot of people to drink a cup of coffee. But as you know, Howard Schultz telling the whole world after United States, China is the biggest market. We just opened a store in a Great Wall and Forbidden City and all that. Okay, and the third one is a battery, lithium polymer battery company. We invested there. We sold it to TDK. Okay, it's an M&A exit. The SMIC is listing Starbucks. Everybody want to buy from us, and so it's going to be M&A. And the Hambrecht is they actually make battery for iNano, iShuffle. All the iNano, iShuffle, because they need to fold like a foil kind of thing, is supplied by this company. Okay, it's so. But one thing we learned is this way, that the Japanese has one company Nomura rated the most successful doing business in China is TDK. Why? They give them the credit is because they work with Hong Kongese and the Taiwanese, Chinese with them. They don't do anything in China without bringing some of the Taiwanese and Hong Kongese with them. With that, I'll change the contemporary art in China quickly now, because those are the conventional. All my friends this afternoon, morning, will tell you more about it. And the art collection, these numbers, 100 million or so, certainly quite a lot, because Chinese always collect some antique. Everybody will not have a fake 700in the home. So, that considered all part of the 100. And I again have to say, Chinese don't eat cheese in general. Okay, for people like my generation, we have to acquire that slowly. Pizza was not our favorite junk food in the beginning, but now I think I had a piece of pizza last night because watching Oscar. Okay, and you can acquire that. You can acquire that sort of funny taste of cheese. And I think the contemporary art thing could be also thing. But I really look at the to economic value. I can tell you that this is a better investment than anything I've touched so far. And I can also assure you, after a lot of study, that the return is, quote unquote, fairly assured if you know what you're doing there. And the reason for that is that cultural revolution and the China ensuing social and economic reform have freed China, the youth today, okay, and using art as a tool to forge the nation emerging identity. And also that you can't talk politics in China, all right? Freedom of speech or so it's not there. Freedom of religion. But you can paint and you can act. As long as it doesn't, border on anything political, you can get away with that. And then, so here is they kind of combine the West and East. And you're going to start seeing the grotesque kind of things which my wife still today would not want to hang any of this painting on our dining room wall, but I'll start showing you. This is Wang Guangyi, the Andy Warhol equivalent in China. Roughly, the painting is about $45,000 to $50,000 for a 120 centimeter by 150 centimeter size. Pretty this auction price. If you bargain a little bit, you go to Beijing, you know some friends, you may get it for $5,000 less, but no less than that. Okay, and you have to order way before. And what this is interesting, like either a Chanel signs or a Coke, and they're trying to kind of what I was told, converge and blend the old Maoist thing with the sort of the capitalism thing, and the conflict all wrapped in this kind of thing. But actually, Deng Xiaoping is the greatest innovator. 20 years ago, Jack, if anybody tell you that they can get the capitalist system perfectly in harmony with the communist dictator government, you say that what? go away, okay? Or even worse. Now, that's what happened in China. And that's famous. And then the Zheng Fanqi, another very famous one. This is, of course, the Last Supper, the mask. What they want to portray here, everybody especially communists, so you put on a mask, okay? But actually, that maybe should be permanent, okay? What's inside, okay? You want to be careful. You don't really want to show it in the communist, complicated world. So you wear your mask there. And I think that all these paintings are in the price range I'm talking about, if not higher now, the Zheng Fanqi, okay? And Yu Mingren, again, they felt that in that kind of society and the emptiness, the confusion, the only way they can express themselves in this very grotesque type of impression on their faces. All these are classics in the contemporary Chinese art. I don't know, Orville, probably you have, I'm sure you have seen most of them before. And then this again shows in that society just the motionness in a way to be confused by this current society or so. And this is by the Zheng Hao, and it shows in the materialism the emptiness that's or whatever it is. These are the contemporary art. So, and of course, there's the other possibility, real estate. Okay, right now maybe a good time to buy because China put on the austerity program, try to suppress that. Okay, but the transformation in China, okay, has its still difficulty. I think earlier, again, people talk about double the risk, double the premiums, so the risk still very much there, okay? And there are lots of very good signs, but I think we have to be very careful, cautious. I think most people talk about those things already. And we learned the lesson is we would avoid joint venture there. And we prefer private company over the state-owned enterprises. We usually take a controlling stake there, so that in case something goes wrong, at least we can do something. But I can tell you all kind of war stories. We didn't have controlling share in that entire company. And we focused the strategy. We're like a branded consumer. One earlier, the problem talked about when you have one, then 25 others follow, you brand it. The only solution, you brand it, okay? And choose the right partner and diversify so that you don't put all the money in one egg there, okay? And there are a lot of other things interesting in China you can do. There are lots of overseas Chinese building schools for China in the remote area. There's Xinxin Hope Project. Cyrus Tan, a very famous, successful Chinese industrialist, has a big educational thing. And I think there are a lot of things involved in the education aspect. And my second son in Beijing worked in the Chinese CDC for 4 or 5 years, helping to get lots of global fund for China. And I work with David Ho a lot in raising money and helping with the mother-child transfer situation. And also the Clinton Foundation, for one, is very involved. I know that Berkeley and has also projects. Those are interesting. The good news right now, I think people were quite worried 2 years ago that this thing could be spread very widely. And then in the authoritarian kind of government like China, actually, is being controlled. And the other thing is the adoption. Western people love to adopt Chinese kids, and the success rate is very high. I have to take my hats off to all my Western friends. So they really love the baby they adopt, but that's a very complicated process in China. Usually take at least 2 years or so, and there are lots of unwanted baby girls in China. And so some program, understanding how to solve is very much, I think, could be helping win-win situation for lots of people. So My conclusion is this, that as the world fast-growing market, so China offers a plethora of opportunities. And UC Berkeley, okay, even without shedding my tears, so I really have to say that has a lot more to offer, okay? I mean, my second son is going to Harvard, so I'm not trying to bias against Harvard. That was an old platform in the East now. And the proximity, who talk about these ocean things, okay? We are part of the Pacific Basin. And I think Berkeley can offer more, not just a platform as Dick Palmer was elaborating, that the foreign Romans come here to talk about everything, to debate or something. I think here, Berkeley tradition is, be active. And you have, what, 40-some% Asian student undergraduate. And in Asia, totally unbiased saying that Berkeley has a bigger name recognition than Harvard. And so with all of those things, the brandings and also, so I think this is the right timing for BCI to really launch a project to help to both the, in the university level as a country level, help the China university. The last thing we want to see is somehow China and United States on a collision course down the road. And we got to stop that and avoid that. With that, I thank you, and I stop my tears. And,
all we wanted to do was listen to Mozart and Beethoven, and then he needed a new Frederick the Great to support contemporary music. Why in China is avant-garde hot, or is it entirely?
I think Orville said earlier that currently the overseas Chinese are buying, and they also want to repatriate the art back to China, and also China become affluent, and collecting art is kind of status symbol and all that. Okay. Yes. Yeah. I think generally the last two Christie auction in Hong Kong, the price I think doubled or something compared a year ago. Mainland buyer, right? Mainland buyer. Yeah.
And the first Sotheby's auction will be March 31st. Contemporary Chinese art.
Look like we got another buyer here. Okay, sure. Thank you.
Many thanks for a really wonderful and interesting presentation. I think we'll take a break now and reconvene back downstairs at 2 o'clock, so fairly shortly, for Howard Chow and his presentation on private equity investing. Thank you.